that was about borrowing for tax cuts. And it's an interesting conversation because say they're not borrowing for tax cuts, but they're borrowing for the groceries. I think they talked about the other week, for the nuts and bolts, for a few of the daily costs. And no one seems to be saying to them, so hang on, so you're not borrowing for tax cuts. So that's coming from the kitty. Got it? But you are borrowing from day-to-day things, which are also coming from the kitty. So if you weren't doing the tax cuts out of the kitty, there'd be money in there not to have to borrow for the daily groceries from the kitty. Is that right? Because that's how it seems pretty clear to me. It's coming from the pool of money that we pay, and they're taking some out as tax cuts, and because there's not enough left to pay for the day-to-day groceries, they're having to borrow for that. So if they're uncomfortable for us to say they're borrowing for tax cuts, then I think it's pretty fair to say they're borrowing to enable tax cuts. I think that's a pretty fair thing to say. I mean, I think they're borrowing for tax cuts, but if they want to accept that, they're borrowing for the little things to enable the ability to give tax cuts.
I think this semantics bullshit is going to be seen through about 30 seconds after they get out of the lockup. If they really have borrowed for tax cuts against the advice of the IMF, against the advice of the OECD, then we actually do risk a credit downgrade. And if there's a credit downgrade, that will actually increase the amount of money that we have to pay for just the interest costs alone. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the interest costs, they're getting to the level where it's larger than what we're spending on education, health, and corrections combined. This is a real problem. And if we are borrowing this much for tax cuts, the market will react. I mean, Nicola Willis can tell us that, I'm borrowing $15 billion and we're giving away $15 billion in tax cuts, but they're different. She can play that game as much as she likes. If the market just goes, this is nonsense, the way they did over Liz Truss's UK budget, remember, when they tried to do the exact same thing, this 100%. Libertarian nonsense, this free market nonsense, it falls on its ass. And unless there's a sting in the tail, like an increase in GST to counter this, this government risks a credit downgrade.
Yeah. And for people, to make it really simple for people, imagine you've got a bank account with 3 or 4 different suffixes, right? It's all your money in 3 or 4 different suffixes. They say they've got enough money in the 00 account, which is where the tax cuts are coming from. But in the 01, there's not enough for groceries. So they're borrowing to the 01 account, the 01 suffix to get the groceries. So that's not from the 00 suffix. But if you go to the actual bank account number, it's the same number. It's the same money. It's the same owner. Different suffixes. If you've got to buy for one of them, it actually impacts everything overall. It's a much easier way to think about it.
And that's what the market will determine very quickly. That's what she's done.